Thank you very much. And good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much for giving up your valuable time to spend with us this afternoon. We really appreciate it. Okay, so my name's Mark Reynolds. I'm the founder and CEO of Hable, and we'll be joined later on by Steve and Everly from Kingston Uni. I used to work at Microsoft and I ran the education team there until the end of 2014 when I left to start this business. But today's all about digital skills. And we've got lots of customers that are smaller than a university that maybe have a few hundred people. And kind of traditional training is fine for a smaller organization. It's fairly easy to get a message to everybody about the new technology that they've got. And it's fairly easy to run training that's accessible for 200, 300, 500 people. But when you get to the size of a university and your staff numbers go into the thousands, it's really difficult to get those digital skills conveyed and landed with people at scale. So what we do about that is have a digital champions approach. Our approach really, as I said, is all centered on people and getting an individual within your organization to change a behavior. Now, we know that whether it's the CIO or your executive team, a lot of you are talking about large organizational change within the higher ed sector. And that's absolutely what you should be doing and should be focusing on from a strategic perspective. But the problem is people are busy and it's hard to connect that large vision for a new look organization down to what the small individual changes that a person can make in their day. And we talk about those small changes as marginal gains or 1% gains. There's a saying in Hable that organizations don't change, the people within them do. And so our job is to try and make sure that enough individuals change within your organization, firstly, to change their own behavior and open their eyes up to new ways of working or being brave enough to try new things. But then you can get some momentum. And our job is to focus on a cohort of champions, help them with their own individual change, but then also help them to spread that word to their colleagues. And so that's not at that point just about digital skills, it's really about change management. So now I'm going to talk about Kingston, and I was really lucky and privileged to be invited to the graduation ceremony for their Digital Champions programme. This was over the summer. And what we had just finished was a dedicated 4-week learning programme for their champions cohort. And that was a mix of change management skills and Microsoft 365 skills. Once you've got an idea about the basics of change management, then you can make sure that people have the skills in the applications and can build what we think of as scenarios. So that might be how to manage assessment better, or that might mean productive or accessible meetings. If you think about a meeting as an example, there's lots of different pieces of technology that go together to make a successful meeting. It's not just about knowing how Teams works. So our job is to try and understand the context of the customer we're working with and then build these learning programs that are really talking to the scenarios or the challenges that you've got at your university. And actually, when we're recruiting, some of our favorite recruits into a digital champions program are your kind of objectors or your reluctant technology users at the start, because there's no better advocate than somebody who was a bit hesitant, a bit scared, not quite sure, why they were on the program, but were brave enough to put their hand up and then gained confidence as they went through it. And so the people, had such a warm reaction to Gainer. It was great to see. And that in-person graduation event is really part of our program. We think it's so important to get some face time with these people. The last thing I mentioned about the event was a brief speech that was done by Caroline Harries, who's the COO at Kingston. And I think this is really important if you're thinking about digital skills in your university. In our opinion, digital skills is not just something that IT should be worrying about. And Carolyn did a great job of standing up and telling all of the digital champions at Kingston how important digital skills were to the university as a whole, in every role and every aspect of what the university is trying to do. And she connected it really well to their whole university strategy. So it was such a positive event, and that's why we decided to suggest to UCISA and to ask Kingston if they'd share a bit of their experience and tell you how they got to this fantastic graduation event. The last thing from me before I hand over is just to share this stat. So obviously at the end of all of our programs, we run a survey and we speak to the people who had been through the program. And 86% of them said that they felt more confident as a result. And we normally look at about a 10% of an organisation staff size. So their job with that new confidence is to go out and tell 10 people about what they've learned. And if you do that, quite quickly, you can drive really meaningful change across the organisation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Britton. I'm the Head of Enterprise Collaboration here at Kingston University. Just to give you a bit of background first about Kingston, we're based in Kingston upon Thames in Surrey, just outside London. Approximately 18 or so thousand students sat here today and about 2,000 staff across our 4 campus sites, multiple faculties and support teams, probably similar to many of you on the call today. Our marketing team obviously told me that I have to make sure we get in there that we are TEF Gold accredited this year, which is a fabulous achievement for us, and is testament to some of the work that we're doing here at Kingston at the moment. We rolled out Microsoft Teams, as many of you would have done, and the subsequent adoption now of hybrid working has continued over the last few years. But it's become very quickly and obvious that we have a skills gap. A gap that's fairly sizable in some parts, and there's all kinds of different shapes and flavours, as we know, within higher education, dealing with different professional departments, dealing with different academics, different disciplines, and our engagement of end users and the way they've used digital technology has grown and needed to grow to try and fill that gap. So we had to do something different. So I was sat on a train one day on my way up to York, and I was thinking about how we need to do this differently. What's the different approach that we can take? We needed something that could be more flexible in its delivery and the content that we provided. We need something that was more powerful in its impact and would drive personal development for our staff and students. And we also wanted to maximize the investment that we've made in our digital technology platforms. So a champion of innovation, creativity, something that could lead to process efficiencies, all of these thoughts buzzing around my head in terms of how we could try and make a difference. And this is where the champions idea first originated. So I started with a press release. What would it actually mean? How would I sell this to senior leaders across the university? Well, I wanted every team across the university to have an active digital champion embedded in the workplace. Something that people could go to, somebody who would actively champion the use of technology to make a difference. So the objectives, what we set out to do was to try and find a partner who could help us, and a fantastic partner we found in Hable. We wanted to try and recruit as many champions as possible, but were realistic in the fact that we knew we wouldn't get every single member of staff. That would be silly. We had to be realistic. So we set out as a minimum criteria that we would recruit at least 150 champions across our staff community. But it wouldn't stop there. The plan is always to continue to grow and to continue to promote those messages as we go along. All of these things were great, and we wanted to make sure that the Kudos champions that we did recruit were like-minded. They were positive about technology. They felt good about using it. They were keen to learn more, and that they would have the confidence to convey their learnings to other colleagues around them, feel comfortable with change, promoting innovation, and being willing to put your hand up and say, hey, let's try something new. There's a new way that we can work around this.
Thanks, Steve. Afternoon, everybody. My name is Evelyn McCarthy. I'm a project manager in the IT portfolio team at Kingston, and I was lucky enough to work on the Kudos Digital Champions program at Kingston, which we started late last year. So as Steve mentioned, we decided to work with the wonderful team at Hable. And after our initial meetings with them, which Mark touched on earlier, they developed a tailor-made training program for us with a mix of essentials webinars. So all of our champions kind of had a base level of knowledge, and then a mixture of smaller scenario-based workshops, and then going into the change adoption training, which was delivered with a mix of both of them. In order to publicize the project, we really used as many different avenues and mediums as we could. We used our staff intranet sites. We've got a regular staff communications email, which we had pieces in over the 4 weeks that we were publicizing the program. We also kind of piggybacked and gate crashed some existing meetings and events, and Hable gave us some freebies, which always went down really well at some of those events. And we just really used as many avenues as we could. As Mark touched on in his intro, we were lucky enough to have the COO as our sponsor, and she did a video message which we sent out across the university, and which was really, really well received and kind of gave us a little bit of weight behind our message. In terms of outcomes, we had excellent uptake from our staff. So as Steve said, our aim was 150 staff members. We got 170 plus from across the university, and we had really good attendance and engagement in the sessions. We really encouraged live attendance. So although we did record some of the sessions, we didn't really actively promote that they were recorded. We really wanted people to attend the live sessions, ask questions, be interactive, bring their own experience, so people could learn from each other. And if people weren't able to attend due to sickness or leave, we'd only share those recordings with individuals rather than make it open to everyone. So it really encouraged people to join the live events, and people benefited from that one-on-one interaction. As Mark said, 86% of our champions reported an increase in confidence from when they started, which was really good. We had work-based coaching from Hable, so they monitored the team site chat and questions. They would post tips on a day-to-day basis after the training, and that really helped us to encourage a community sense. And towards the end of the training program, champions were actually answering questions of other champions, which is really the place we wanted to get to. The more pictures of our graduation. This was a really joyous event. It had such a nice atmosphere. It was well attended. We served breakfast, and I'm sure, like other universities, when free food is on offer, people flock. So we had great attendance. We also gave all of the champions a goodie bag, which was branded with our logo, our Kingston Digital Champion logo, which you could see on my previous slide. And those weren't only to say thank you to the champions for taking part in the program, also a way to promote ourselves. So we had lanyards for our staff badges, mouse mats, reusable coffee cups, so that people could have those on their desk when they're in the office. And if someone's walking past, they can see, oh, that colleague's a digital champion. If I've got an issue, a question about digital skills, I can go and ask them. And they were really well received. And yeah, it was just a really great event to be part of.
Did your COO attend the Champions Programme as well as sponsoring it?
That's a great question. I believe she did attend some of the training, yes. She certainly did attend the workshops around what the Kudos initiative was about. So she was on the ground with the staff, understanding the things they would be learning. I'll have to double check though whether she did actually complete the training. If not, I'll make sure I follow up with her.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I was going to mention this in closing, but I'll mention it now just quickly. We're starting a digital champions program now with De Montfort University, and I hope they won't mind me saying that the one thing they've done slightly differently to the Kingston program is they put a bit of budget aside specifically to work with their university leadership board, and that isn't something that everybody does. But sometimes we get with very senior people, they either don't want to be on the same program as everybody else, or they don't have the time to. So some prefer to be, in the same cohort as a load of their staff because they get to learn a lot about what's happening on the ground. But we have done it where it's just a specific program for the leadership team.
But as Everly mentioned in her presentation, what we've now got is a self-serving community that's actually starting to collaborate and talk with each other and answer their own queries, where they've found a good way to do something and they're sharing that best practice with their colleagues, which is fabulous. So it's become a self-sustaining model. And every now and again, we just feed new things into it. We showcase some of the new technologies that have come along. So Bing Chat Enterprise, for example, that's hit our tenancy over the last couple of weeks. You know, we're starting to tell people about how they can use that and how they can get the best out of that. And certainly within our team's kind of workspace for that community, we're seeing some really good feedback and people using it for weird and wonderful things, but productivity in what they do, which is great.
How you engage with colleagues that might have specific learning needs, and how you enabled them to be part of the network.
So I think with this one here, we with a lot of the training materials that we put together and the learning pathways we curate, we try to put accessibility first and foremost. You know, if you plan, I think it's called the curve effect. If you look it up, if you plan for accessibility, then actually you can make life better for everybody. And you can really keep things really simple in terms of your delivery. So we try to consider those things in all of the learning pathways we put together and the materials we do. We don't actually have a formal team within IT around accessibility and learning differences, but we do work with colleagues around in our student services teams and our organisational development for staff to make sure that we're aligned with all those best practices.
Now, Steve, if I can also just come in, Gaynor and James, our trainers, were great at showing all the accessibility options at the start of every session. At the onboarding webinar, they were very open about people being honest. If they had specific needs that they weren't addressing, to please let them know so that we could accommodate them. So all of those accessibility options were clearly communicated at the start of every session. And we actually had a specific dedicated work-based scenario about inclusivity and accessibility, mainly aimed at teaching staff on how to make sure that all of their meetings and teaching sessions were designed around students who might have specific needs. But I think we had really good engagement from any staff who may have had specific learning needs, and it was really positive feedback from them.
Did you involve people from your help desk, your frontline services team? And then has any of this and the Champions program reduced the number of calls that you're seeing on your help desk?
That's a great question as well. The Champions program was open to everybody. Nobody was excluded from it, from our staff body. So absolutely, our service desk team would have been able to access the Kudos Champions network. We seen a reduction in calls? The calls that come through to my team and then get routed through, we have seen a drop in the number of people who can't find things on OneDrive or SharePoint, whatever it might be, because we can only allude to the fact without going back to them. We can't really pin it exactly on the Champions network, but we have seen a drop in that kind of traffic coming through. So yeah, we'd like to think it's had a positive impact. Certainly a drop in tickets is always good news, because it's not a drop in usage. We can see that from our 365 stats.
A few people have asked for this again in the chat. I know it looks like it's an actual hardback book. Just to say again, that doesn't exist, I'm afraid, at least not yet. You know, maybe Rosie will talk to me afterwards and say maybe we should make one, but we're trying to be green, people. We're trying to be green and not do too much printing. But if you point your phone at that QR code, and the link will go around, I think, in the follow-up email as well from UCISA, you'll be able to download our ebook, which is completely free, and it's the kind of checklist Hable use when we're planning and delivering a Champions program. So we hope you find that a useful resource, and obviously we'd welcome you getting in touch if you want to talk about what it might look like in your university.
No, just to say thank you all for attending, and hope you found something useful in there.
Oh, Steve, you're on mute.
If you want to reach out and ask any questions.
Every meeting, doesn't it? So well done, Steve.